Hello dear friends, I welcome you all to my Institute English Cosmos, and in this video I'm going to talk about a very famous world literature work, Death in Venice. It is written by Thomas Mann. He was a Nobel laureate, he was awarded Nobel Prize, and we constantly see that his stories and his novels are being asked in all the competitive exams. So I have chosen today to speak on this story. Kindly watch the complete video, because this video is only for the serious students, because I see that my videos are constantly being watched by all the students throughout India who are very seriously preparing for their NET exam particularly. So what I have prepared today about this book is that it is a story by Thomas Mann, and its hero is Gustav von Aschenbach. Aschenbach is the German term, and some students may ask, like, what is the meaning of von? So first of all, even they can also ask you in your exam the question that what is the significance of the term von, the word German term von, von, Gustav von Aschenbach. Von was, a term, a title which was given to aristocratic people or those who have done something great in literature and all. Okay, so we can understand that this imaginative character, this protagonist in the story, he's a writer, and he's suffering from writer's block in the story. Writer's block means, it's a linguistic term, when a writer doesn't get ideas. So he shifts his position from somewhere, and then he tries to visit Venice, and how he dies there and what happens in between. This is the whole story about. The story talks about this protagonist, one who strays from his rigid, disciplined lifestyle and finds himself in the grip of a homosexual love with a 14-year boy, and the boy's name is I'll be just talking about. His name is Tadzio. Okay, but he directly does not fall in love. What happens actually in the story, that we are shown in the story in the very first few pages that he was widowed. This Gustav von Aschenbach, he was widowed at a very young age, and when he goes to Venice, he falls in love with a 14-year Polish boy whose name I have already mentioned, Tadzio. So soon the story has an appealing as well as appalling imagery of contagion, diseases, pandemic. And then in the story, he shows to many pages that there is a smell of disinfectant. So we come to know that as soon as the story moves ahead, there comes the existential imagery of a rotten smell, death, disease, all these. Because this is a story which is based on the conflict between a person's and his, imaginary attraction towards homosexual attraction towards a young boy. So at one point we see in the story that Tadzio, he returns Aschenbach's glances. So up to some pages we see that this is one-sided love, but later on we come to know that that 14-year boy also returns the glances. So it means we come to know that this is a sort of attraction or a love from both the sides. So and then immediately after this happens in the story, soon we know that there is a spread of cholera. And one night we see that Aschenbach, one who has been returned the glances by that boy Tadzio, has a Dionysian dream of sexual nature, and he starts openly following Tadzio. Earlier there was some hesitation, but now in the night when he dreams about some Dionysian, now there is a term. Nietzsche was a German philosopher, and he gave us two terms, Apollonian and Dionysian. So I will be just talking about at the end of the video about Apollonian and Dionysian terms also. But this is not the right time to talk about, but you can say that it's orgy, or say some illogical revelry open sexual love, or say intoxication, and to move about logically, and to keep rationality at bay sometimes, is called Dionysian, because Bacchus was the god of wine, and from Bacchus there is another term Dionysian also. So this term is used in from the writer has taken this term from the Greek culture, and then in the night he dreams about he dreams of a Dionysian nature, and now he goes to a saloon and attempts to look more attractive. In the story, we are shown in the very beginning that when he sees somebody of mature age, around 50, or say around more than 50 plus, wrong side of 50, if somebody dyes his hair, or say use some ruse, and to improve his complexion, so he used to look down upon these kind of people in the story. But then we see that he himself goes to saloon and tries to dye his hair and want to look more attractive in the story. Clear? So now there is a very important scene. Why I'm talking about certain particular scenes and talking in detail about these things, that because they had questions about these things in our net exam. So my all videos are ultimately made for students who are preparing for net GRF exam. So those who are serious will listen to me very carefully. That now what happens in the story, in the Venice, the writer shows, Thomas Mann shows that there is a hot weather, and he waits somewhere for Tadzio, because now he has been returned the glances, so he feels that the boy also loves him and the boy will come to him. And then he eats some strawberries, and he falls in dream, and there again he dreams a platonic love dream. Platonic love means without any condition, a sort of dream like two people fall in love but without any physical relationship. So now you can see the contrast, that in the night he had a Dionysian dream, and in the morning, at the crossroad somewhere in a eatery somewhere, where he eats strawberries, he falls asleep, and he has a platonic love dream. At beach, we find Aschenbach dies at the end of the story. Now, I'm sorry, I'm not going to cut this video for this sneeze of mine. I'm sorry. I was touching my nose, so it caused this sneeze. Now, why I have abruptly ended the story? Because in the end, the writer shows that this passionate love is not consummated, and he's waiting for that boy in his deck chair at the beach, and the boy is playing with some other person of his age at the beach, and the two boys fight, and then he wins, and he comes to this man. Ultimately, Tadzio, the boy, might be coming to this man, but he tries to lift himself up. I can read from the story itself, the last two lines, that he tries to stand Aschenbach, but he falls in his chair and dies immediately. So minutes is passed after he had collapsed sideways in his chair before anyone hurried to his assistance. He was carried to his room, and later that same day the world was respectfully shocked to receive the news of his death. So this is what the death in Venice. So they might ask you a question like, whose death has been talked about? Was it the death of that younger boy, or was it the death of that writer? So it was the death of a writer. Now, have I prepared this lecture for this story? Story can be read by anybody, from anywhere. Let me talk about certain important facts from which they can ask you questions. The very first thing is that it's English translation, because this work was written by a German writer. So this German work was first translated by Kenneth Burke, again a very famous name. Those who have been constantly preparing for net exam, they know about him, and it was published in the famous magazine The Dial in 1924. Okay, and the second thing is about why Thomas Mann wrote this story. What was his intention? So his intention was to write about that he considered that passion as confusion and degradation. So there is a message in the story. The message is not that anybody can fall in love with anybody. He wants to show intellectually, because somehow our hero represents intellect because he's a writer. Okay, so but his passion creates a confusion and ultimately degradation in his life. So this was the message or the moral of the story. Another important fact about the story is that the writer was inspired by Goethe, the German great writer, one who came up with world literature and its definition, one who danced when he first read Shakuntalam by Kalidasa. So that great writer, one who also wrote, Dr. Faustus, other than Marlowe in English literature, there was a German version also. Okay, so that Goethe once fell in love with an 18-year-old baroness, and which inspired, to write about some of his famous works. And Thomas Mann is somehow revealing that these kind of passions are degrading at times, can spoil your career, can spoil your ultimate being. Okay. And again, there is a concept of homosexuality also in the story, that from different angles homosexuality has been looked upon, because there have been constant intertextual references of Plato's famous books, Symposium and Phaedrus. You can write the names of these two books, Symposium and Phaedrus, where there is a talk of, in Greek culture, those who want to know more can read about it, that there was a concept of like philosophers used to have their younger companions, male companions, and there was a familial nod also from the family, that they can have a sexual liaisons at times. So from that Greek culture there is a reference of that. Apart from that, when Thomas Mann wrote this story, there was a culture of showing Greek deities in stories in the personification form. So we can see that this figure Tadzio, this character Tadzio in the whole story, has been compared with Greek god. Clear? And another important fact about this story is that the writer is inspired by Sigmund Freud's views on dreams. Everybody knows that Sigmund Freud was the compelling, the inspiring force of creation, for all the modernist writers, whether they are Virginia Woolf or James Joyce, or say all the other T.S. Eliot and all. Clear? And I have already talked about intertextuality in the story. Intertextuality is a term where you find direct references of different texts, which are mingled and co-referred, or say there are allusions from different texts to different texts. Okay. And there is a mixture of Nietzschean terms. Friedrich Nietzsche was a German philosopher, and he gave, in The Birth of Tragedy, was a book he wrote. In that book, he talked about Apollonian and Dionysian, the two concepts, which is visible in the world, where the one world is very much patterned, rational, logical, and creative. Okay, but on the other hand, there is revelry, orgy, intoxication, and sometimes even we people want something which should be illogical in our life, so that we can sustain our creativity, we can sustain our whole being, tortured by the logical world. So there is a complete mixture of these two things in life. So that has been shown in the story. Though there is a point of view of the writer, you can say that the writer somehow, by showing death of the protagonist, wants to convey a very strong message that this is not good. Clear? Then another important information for all of you, that Aschenbach as a name and character are inspired by German homosexual poet August von Platen Hallermunde. I repeat the name, August von Plater Hallermunde, as there are allusions to his poems which were written on homosexuality in the novella. Apart from that, I also remember there are many scenes in the whole story which give us some hint in the very beginning of the story that the story is going to end with a death. For example, there comes the reference of gondola in the very starting of the poem, when the poet wants to shift from ship to the land. So there comes a gondola driver, or say, should I use the word driver or not? I'm not sure. But that person, who ferries that gondola is a very sort of, a boat over there in Venice. So which ferries people from one to the other part of the city. And there, that person is linked with the grave digger. Okay, so there are apart from that, there are so many different symbols are there in the story. There are tropes in the story, but I don't guess like they are going to ask you questions from that. So this was my side because the video is going to be a bit longer. But I thought like if this video remains to the length of 15 minutes, then I think a serious student can spare some time for 15 minutes to watch this video. Kindly share and subscribe and like my videos. Thank you very much.